we've got a market that is most definitely under fire right now. Investors are very nervous because, well, Donald Trump came out with the tariffs, and they were a little bit more than people thought. And they weren't exactly tariffs as people had assumed. The calculation on the numbers was a little perplexing to many because it wasn't just simple tariffs. It also included, well, do you have any currency manipulation going on? Do you have any other barriers? And then, as you really looked at it, it effectively seemed as though the president and his economic team looked at the trade deficit and used a multiple of that because, he does not like trade deficits, needless to say. I think you know that quite well. Let me take a look at the markets here as we come up on the close of trading right now. I'm going to share this screen with you guys. I think I can do that. Ha! What do you know? This is nifty. Let me know if you can't hear me, but I think you can. I'm looking at the Dow dropping 1,600 points, S&P heading towards the biggest loss of 2020. Well, it's still early in the year, and we've got the NASDAQ down nearly 6%. Okay, so this is most definitely a more volatile day. If you look at the VIX index over there on the right, it's a measurement of volatility, and what you see is it's approaching 30. So yeah, there's some volatility, but what did you expect? I mean, seriously, he has always wanted this, always wanted this. In fact, if you go back to a couple decades ago, you'd hear the whole speech, the same speech actually that we heard yesterday in the Rose Garden, effectively.
Last year criticizing U.S. foreign policy. What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation. Something's going to happen over the next number of years with this country because you can't keep going on losing $200 billion, and yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
This sounds like...
Okay, so this has obviously been clearly part of his positioning for many, many, many years. And now he's back for round two, and he's like, I'm going to change this. I need to change this. I want to create a more level playing field. And what this really, in essence, is about is doing what we can to help American manufacturing a little bit. Let's face it, both sides, left and right, haven't cared two bits about American manufacturing. You look back at NAFTA and all the jobs that were exported away from America. And before you say, oh, well, we're changing, we're becoming more technological. Sure, that's great. And by the way, Donald Trump is all about technology too. What do you think Elon's doing there? Right? Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, who's now back in the mix. I mean, he actually is very passionate about embracing the best technology for an AI future, yet simultaneously, we got to do what we can to ensure that we have a strong manufacturing base. That's important from a national security standpoint, from a national economic security standpoint, but also from a national security standpoint. God forbid something's bad is in the world going on, and all of a sudden, you don't have any steel manufacturers because you sent that all overseas. I've told you the story about how frustrated I was coming out of COVID when you had all the factories back up and running here in the States, and yet you couldn't get the chemicals to make Clorox wipes. I like those. That's how I clean my desk. I take a Clorox wipe and I wipe it down. I couldn't buy these things anywhere. Not because we didn't have the ability to make it, but because we were dependent on China for the chemicals. Simple stuff, right? I think if we learned anything coming out of 2020, it was one, not to overreact, and two, to think about our supply chains and to not be so overly dependent on everyone else. But in truth, what this really is getting at is the issue of fairness. The issue of fairness. In other words, why are they charging that much? Why are they artificially deflating their currency? Why are they doing all of that? and we don't have a level playing field. My former co-host, actually, at CNBC, a guy named Larry Kudlow, who used to run his economic team, was on Fox earlier today talking about these very issues and really stressing the importance of what I'm going to call. I just talked to my friend Alex Marlowe over at Breitbart yesterday, and he said he sat down with the president a couple of weeks ago. He's like, why don't you call it equitable trade? And the president's like, no, I'm not going to call it equitable trade. But I said the same thing to Alex. I'm like, I'd call it equitable trade. Like, this is equity. Like, this is fair. You guys are going to charge that much, or we're going to come back with something else. Now, also keep in mind, this is sort of first go around. This is negotiation, okay? And Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, reiterated that. But here, I want you to listen to my former co-host on CNBC, one Larry Kudlow, who ran the economic team in the last go around.
His policy of reciprocity is exactly right. There has to be a level playing field. For many decades, okay, all these foreign countries have not played by the rules. You know, you can talk about free trade all you want. They have high tariffs, very high tariffs, low wages. They erect enormous barriers. They're tariff and non-tariff barriers. Sometimes they're currency barriers to prevent us from exporting to them. That's done a lot of damage to our economy, particularly industrial goods, the industrial heartland. It's just what the president said yesterday. Reciprocity is the right. Now, the transition, okay, I mean, I'm reading crazy things, for heaven's sakes. People saying globalism is in, no more global trade. Yes, of course, there'll be plenty of global trade, but there has to be a level playing field. We're not even close to fair trade. That's what this.
Wait, hold on a second. But I feel like there was a conversation you and I had not too long ago where you, while in favor of the tariffs, thought maybe they were going too big.
Well, I don't know that, and I'm not going to wade into that. That's an internal policy issue. I'm just saying I'm interested in the policy and the principles of the policy.
Copy.
And he is correct. And remember, you have to look at this in the context of his overall economic plan.
Yeah.
And the stock market, I think, will come around to
okay.
this. He is cutting taxes. He is slashing regulations. He is increasing energy production, lowering costs. And yes, he's improving fair trade. There'll be a lot of movement. You will see. I don't care what the initial reactions are. You're going to see a lot of foreign companies come here and say, we will cut this tariff, we will cut that tariff, we will cut this tariff, we will cut that tariff. That is exactly what reciprocity is all about. But the other point he makes, and again, I'm going to defend him on this, we can't keep standing by. Too many presidents have stood by. Trump went at it with China in his first term. Now he's going at it on a global basis.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think you should be surprised. I mean, the media, of course, is glomming onto this and totally hysterical. And that's augmented by the fact that you have people like the former Treasury Secretary of the United States, Larry Summers, who often, look, he's political in nature, right? He worked for Clinton and he worked for Obama, and he can't help himself. And so he's piling on, and the hysteria was like full throttle last night as you saw the futures market down. I got so many, phone was blowing up. Everybody's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I'm buying, okay? I'm sorry. I went through this in 2020. I've been through this in the year 2000. I went through it again in 2008. And what's the moral of the story? You don't bet against America, okay? Because long run, we are still the only game in town. And when you look at our tech sector, I mean, Mag 7, look, it's gotten beaten down to the level which, I should remind you guys before I go to Larry, just investinmaga.com, free newsletter. We have several portfolios over at 76 Research. One of them, we just put one of those Mag 7 companies in our resilience, our growth portfolio, because it had gotten so beaten down. So go check it out. You can get the free version there at investinmaga.com today. But Larry Summers, he wrote last night, late, or I guess around 9:30, never before has an hour of presidential rhetoric cost so many people so much. Markets continue to move after my previous tweet. The best estimate of the loss from tariff policy is now closer to $30 trillion or $300,000 per family of four. Jim Chanos, who's a billionaire hedge fund investor guy I've known for many years and is not exactly conservative, fires back at Larry, 30 trillion? That's roughly 27% of global GDP. With all due respect, I'll take the under on that one. In other words, you guys are just freaking hysterical. Like it reminds me of 2020 all over again. And it's really interesting. I was talking to Rob, my colleague there, again, investedmaga.com. Rob Horton, my colleague at 76 Research, and we were looking at this information and we're like, okay, there's some interesting just data points here for the math nerds out there. Do you know that it was actually, he gave me these numbers. Rob, if you're watching now, text them over to me because the dates are fascinating. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. February 19th, 2025 was basically the top in this market because we've been trending down since then. You know, everybody was excited. Donald Trump had won. And then since February 19th, we've basically been in this downward drift, which got augmented today. But if you look at February 19th, 2020, that was also the high last time. And then we started going down because of COVID, et cetera. And we eventually had a 32% drawdown, fully in bear market territory. Today, we're in correction territory because we are, as I said, down, about 11% from the highs that we had back on February 19th. Thank you so much again for your generosity, Spirit-filled writing. When prices go down, perfect to invest. I mean, that's the idea here, right? I try and teach my kids. I do. I really try and reinforce this because they have a really long time horizon. And so they get a little allowance money and I let them put it in the market, just, simple stuff. But I encourage them, on a day like today, I did encourage them and had them buy because they've got a long time horizon. And when you see this kind of steep sell-off, and this was steep, guys. I mean, this was really, really steep. Again, looking as these numbers settle out, I mean, you're going to be looking at about a 6% loss. Check that out there on the 6% loss there on the NASDAQ. I mean, just unbelievable here. And it's not really a surprise in light of how much people are worried. And I would just say you have to understand the worry. And I get back to this idea that you knew this was coming and that this is, again, overdone. Like they overdo it all the time because the media gets in and everybody freaks out. And once the air clears, they'll have some time to think about it. And they'll have some time to negotiate. So we already see, I think it was Thailand that came out and said, okay, we're going to do 0% tariffs. Canada's willing to talk. All of these countries are going to be willing to talk. If they know what's good for them, they will be willing to talk.